Welcome to Sales Fiction, a podcast that helps small sales teams get big results. I'm your host, Christy Lawrence, the founder of Mighty Sales and a longtime sales professional who traded my corporate sales career to help small but mighty teams do more with less. Each week on this podcast, we separate sales fact from sales fiction so that you can hyper-focus your effort on the skills, strategies, and tools that will have the biggest impact on your bottom line. Let's dive right in. Welcome to Sales Fiction. I'm really excited this week to have a guest on the show, John Peterson, who I have had the pleasure of working with for probably 2 years now, which is crazy, time flies. But John is the owner of JPI Insurance Solution. He leads a team of 20 amazing professionals. And he brings 18 years of sales experience to that team, starting in retail sales at Nordstrom in women's shoes, but really the bulk of it in B2B sales. So he has a lot of expertise, both in terms of doing sales and leading sales team. John, thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, thanks for the invite. I look forward to what we're going to be talking about today. Sales is, it's one of those things that a lot of people misunderstand what it's all about, but when you get into it and understand it, it really is a lot of fun.
So say a little bit more about that from your perspective in terms of people misunderstanding sales, because I agree with you, but I think just going a little bit into your perspective on that.
Yeah, I think, my personality type, I'm not the type of person that will, chit chat with someone next to me in line at the grocery store. I think that's what a lot of people assume. To be a great salesperson, you got to be the, chatty catty or, someone that just is always talking to people. And a lot of times people assume that salespeople are there just to make a buck and really strong arm people into making decisions that may not be in their best interest. And I had that understanding about salespeople just from my own experience, where you have basically these verbal bullies trying to make money off of you. And so, when I got into sales and I had some really good mentors, it totally changed my perspective on what sales actually is.
I love that you said that, because that's one of the reasons why this podcast is called Sales Fiction, because I think there is a lot of misunderstanding about what sales is and what you need to do in sales in order to be successful. And that sales really isn't about just being charismatic and convincing people to do things. It's about actually serving people and developing relationships. So I want to talk a little bit, you had mentioned having some mentors when you first started out. Can you share a little bit about some of those experiences and how those mentors helped shape your experience in sales?
When it comes to mentors, I think, for me, I learned a lot more just by observing and seeing. And so, I got into sales, retail sales. Women's shoes is definitely something I'm not passionate about at all, but it was a job in college. And there was a gentleman there that was the manager of the sales department in the women's shoe section. I just really observed him and, how he just handled, rejection or just understanding what it is that the people wanted to know. It's not rocket science sales for the most part. In women's shoes, it's pretty easy where they give you, hey, this is what I want, go get it for me.
Yeah.
But with Nordstrom, you had to come back with actually 2 other types of shoes to try to upsell them. And so he just had an excellent way of delivering what it is that he thought the individual wanted to make their day better, because, not only did I get this pair that I wanted, I also have some other options here. I thought just observing how he did that versus just trying to push stuff on people. When I got into much, much more technical type of sales, insurance, I had a mentor. He was my sales manager out of Seattle. And I just learned so much from him because, early on, I went off to insurance school for my first year. They flew me back to Minnesota 4 times. I was actually in class a total of 30 days throughout my first year of just learning insurance knowledge. When I got out, I'm a rep now. I can go out and try to sell my product. I really verbally vomited all over people with my knowledge.
Yeah.
And because I just need to show them like, hey, I might be new, but it doesn't matter. I know exactly how to cover your risk. And he pulled me aside and said, look, John, it's not about what you know. It's about what the customer needs and what they want, what they care about. And over time, as I'd watch him, interact with these potential clients, just the way that he went about it, which was it wasn't about what you knew as a salesperson. It was about really what that person needed and just connecting in a much different way.
It's funny that you shared that because I had a very similar experience when I started out in sales. I started out in medical sales, very similar, like 3 months of training, 6 weeks on the East Coast, and you go out the first day, going out and talking to customers. And I was with a more experienced rep, and the first doctor I talked to is like, I have all this great information to tell you, like total vomiting, and almost the exact same thing. He pulls me aside, like, okay, like that, you know a lot, but slow down, actually connect with the customer, find out what their challenges are. And it was just that shift of, oh, I'm not just supposed to be a commercial and tell you everything I know.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's when it gets fun. Like once you know your product or your service, whatever it might be, and it really is about helping people. And
Mm-hmm.
when you can get in that mindset of being comfortable with yourself and being comfortable just with that process of talking to a complete stranger and understanding really in the depths of who you are, I'm here to help you. And it just takes all the pressure off trying to strong arm somebody into doing something they don't want to do. When it really is about helping people, it's a lot of fun. When it's not about that, it's absolutely miserable.
Absolutely. And, even going back to what you said about at Nordstrom, I think that's a really important point where, kind of their philosophy is give people what they want, like the first pair of shoes they want to try, but bring two other solutions or two other pairs. And I think just that mindset of you're not just an order taker either, that it's not just about saying, yes, I can do that for you, but
Yeah.
understanding, okay, what they really want is to look good and feel confident. What other things can provide for them that might help them do that?
Yeah. And when he shifted it, because when I heard that, it's like really like we're just pawning stuff off and trying to get our sales out.
Yeah.
The approach he took was, it's they're here for a reason. They obviously love shoes. There's a reason they're at Nordstrom and not at Payless Shoe Store. They're
Mm-hmm.
here for an experience, and if you can give them an experience and give them other options, and it's like it was just a shift for me mentally. It's like, oh, okay, it's not just about. I mean, to one degree, yes, it's about making more sales, but to another thing, it's providing an experience and giving them, yeah, more solutions, more things that they want. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's great to see that in action versus just trying to fumble your way through it.
And I think it is great because this is like, it might seem like a silly example when we're talking about shoes, right?
Yeah,
Compared to things like commercial insurance or, even what we were talking about before we were recording, where we just had all these wildfires and, you're responsible for making sure people have protection and have resources for when there's a catastrophic event. So compared to that, right, shoes seems kind of silly, but
yes,
the philosophy is really important. I just did an episode on why you shouldn't sell people what they want. And the truth is, a lot of people don't really know what they want. What they want is so much deeper than a pair of shoes.
100%.
And it's
They want to
easy,
be loved. They want to be accepted.
100%.
They want to have confidence.
Yeah, and you're
That's
the
what it's about.
expert in whatever it is that you're selling. And so if you can help them actually get clear about what they want and discover it and how your solution helps them, you're way ahead of the game versus just giving them what you think they want.
Yeah, and the long term experience that I've had, I mean, some of my really good friends actually came because they're clients of mine, and I was able to get to that point. And it really is, especially with insurance, it's an intimate thing to have those conversations of financials, the risks, the things they worry about that keep them up at night. And going through that process and doing a great job, I've got some really good friends that I never had just because of the sales process.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we've talked a little bit about mentors. What is the best piece of sales advice you've ever received?
There's a couple different things. Number one, I think the most important thing is to sell something you believe in.
Hmm.
That is the foundation of it. If you're in a industry or you have a product or a service that you don't really believe in yourself, it is a miserable place to be. And
Hmm.
so go after, something that you really do believe in. I'm a horrendous salesperson when I'm trying to push something that I don't personally believe in. And I worked for a large national insurance company. One of the things that they required was selling permanent life insurance. And though I think that, whole life, has its place in certain instances, they wanted me to sell it to anyone and everyone. And I had to hit extremely high sales numbers to be able to get to bonuses and company trips and things like that. And it was always a struggle for me because I personally did not really believe that it was a great solution for every single person out there.
Yeah.
And so I just looking back, it's like, man, I'm so glad I don't have to pawn that stuff off on people because I don't really believe that it is a good fit for everyone. So
Yes.
number one, I think, find something that you believe in and go after it and tell people why you believe in it and why it's important and why you love it. And that's where really the passion comes in when you're having conversations with people, because otherwise it's just empty words. You're just trying to sell a product. I think the other thing that really made a big impact on me when it came to sales advice was he was a regional manager for a national insurance company I used to work for. And he was a very dynamic speaker. He was just overall just a great guy. And the thing he said was, sales really isn't a complicated thing.
Hmm.
The number one thing that you need to think about when you're selling something is find out what people care about and give it to them. That's it.
Hmm.
It's a very simple thing. Whatever it is that you're selling, whatever product or service, if you can figure out what it is that they care about, and if you can give that to them, they're going to buy from you and they're going to really appreciate the fact that you gave it to them.
Yeah.
And so, it's not about, being slick with words. It's not about your knowledge. It's not about, being that person who can, you know, go up to somebody in a line and talk to them about your product. It's not
Hmm.
about that, and especially with a technical industry like insurance, if you can just dumb it down and just get to the point to where if you can figure out what they care about and you can give it to them, you're going to win.
Yeah.
And it's definitely been a game changer for me because now it's just about helping people. It's
Yeah.
about asking a lot of questions. It's about listening, and it's about getting really to the core of who they are and what they want. And you give it to them, and it's a whole heck of a lot more fun than trying to memorize lines and trying to memorize
Yeah.
all this technical information. And yet, though that's extremely important to have, don't get me wrong, because when they do ask questions, you need to have an answer and have a confident answer. But when it comes down to it, the heart of it, when it's about figuring out what people want and giving it to them, it's definitely been a game changer for me to where it moves from feeling pressured to sell something into I'm in the job of helping people with their needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I would say to your point, I think asking questions is one of the most overlooked part of sales. That if you get really good at asking compelling, engaging questions, the sales process is 100 times easier. And then a lot of times people want to focus on things like, to your point, product knowledge or having a
Yeah,
slick line. But it's like if you get good at asking questions, the whole process is so much easier.
yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on that.
What's another overlooked aspect of sales from your perspective?
Out of all the salespeople I've met, and myself included from time to time, is really the importance of having a plan
Mm-hmm.
and sticking to it. I see a lot of times with salespeople where they'll kind of outline their day, maybe like the morning of, and just kind of wing it. And those that really have a clear plan laid out. So, I mean, and I'm talking a comprehensive plan. So, I mean, I'm looking out like a year out. It's like, okay, what are my goals for the year? What do I need to accomplish? And then breaking it down, just reverse engineering that to, okay, if I need to hit this number from a year from now, what does that look like for what I need to be doing every single month? And then break it down to every single week and
Yeah.
then break it down to every single day. So And that's where it's fun, is when you can break it down to where it's like it takes all the pressure off, because okay, if I do these activities every single day, I'm going to win. I'm going to hit my sales goal, and I'm going to accomplish what it is I want to accomplish.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you see those, people have a plan, or maybe a company forces a plan on them. Those that follow a plan are those that win, period. And I think a lot of salespeople, they just overlook that and they don't take it serious, because, if you fail to plan, you're basically choosing to fail.
Yeah. So why do you think people, I have a thought on this, but why do you think people struggle in sales with either having a plan or with following the plan? Because I often find that people have the plan,
Yeah.
but then they just do the plan and then never look at it again.
Yeah, I think it's similar to the book Eat That Frog.
Yeah.
Doing the uncomfortable things day in and day out is a challenge. It takes accountability. It takes concerted effort to do things that are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's too much of a bother. I'm going to take the easy way out. I'm going to try to, win the lottery through sales, and just, hopefully it works,
Yeah.
and I'm going to get that one big fish today, versus if you just grind it out and hit your numbers, it's going to work.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I think it's harder now too, because for a lot of small business owners, people in sales, there's so much emphasis on, social media and advertising, and those things can certainly be effective,
That's
but
the easy way out if that's all you rely on.
exactly. And I think the reason people do it is because they don't actually have to be uncomfortable, and they don't have to worry about rejection, but they're not really actually, they can pretend that they're doing things that are important without
Yeah.
actually doing the hard things.
Yeah. So it's like making the mistake of feeling like activity is productivity, but it really isn't.
Yeah. So what have you found helps your team get past that kind of resistance to doing the uncomfortable things?
I think it starts with being honest about it.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's that quote of, if something is worth it in life, it's definitely worth fighting for. Otherwise, why are you even here to begin with?
Yeah.
And the things that require dedication, and even like a relationship, an intimate relationship with your spouse. I mean, it takes commitment. It takes doing the uncomfortable to make it be a really good thing. So I think number one, it just starts to be honest. It's like, yeah, hey, there's some things that, number one, I'm proud to sell insurance. I see it as a privilege,
Yeah.
and it's something you need to take very serious. And there's things that if you're going to win, really it comes down to, are you willing to do the more uncomfortable things versus your competitor down the street? And if you are, I can pretty much guarantee you're going to succeed in this business. And if you're not willing to, then chances are the person next to you or the competitor down the road is going to win over you, and you're not going to like your job because you could lose it. Because salespeople naturally are competitive. And so I think it's just having that honest conversation to begin with often,
Yeah.
and calling people back to it. And so if you have really clear measurables, so number one, starting out with just having honest conversations. And number two is having clear measurables and keeping people accountable to them. And sometimes you have to go back to why these things matter. So I think being honest and keeping people accountable, hitting those measurables.
And I think ultimately what you're saying is that it's a choice every single day, that you can choose to be comfortable or you can choose to win, but you can't choose both.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's when it gets fun, is when you start, it's amazing, that feeling when you start tasting success and winning. Because again, it's the big light switch for me when it came to sales was, seeing it as a competition. So I grew up playing sports. When I made it about winning and competition, and then actually doing the stuff that you had to do to win,
Yeah.
when you actually get that success, it's an amazing feeling.
100%. And it's funny because I think one of the myths about sales is that it eventually, people who are in sales for a long time, they're comfortable all the time. They get used to it. And I feel like for me, I've been doing
Autopilot.
sales for 20 years, and there are still times I'm nervous when I pick up the phone to call a prospect.
Yeah, and I mean that's actually pretty true. Even with, like, I've done a lot of public speaking, and it's the same type of thing. Those butterflies,
Yeah.
and I think if you can recognize those butterflies as a good thing, a lot of people just assume those are bad things. No,
Yeah.
it's actually, it's your body giving you energy and clarity and focus. If you can
Absolutely.
really harness that and use it for your advantage versus being like, oh no, I have that feeling again. Use that feeling, embrace that feeling, don't fight it.
Absolutely. And I think that is the biggest thing where people are like, oh, I'm going to, don't be nervous. And it's like, okay, I am nervous. Acknowledge it and move forward.
Yeah, 100%.
So I feel like all of us who've been in sales for a long time have gotten bad advice along the way. Things that maybe you tried or you just heard and you're like, heck no, that's not going to work. So I always like to ask this question, but what is the worst piece of sales advice that you've received?
Oh, there's a couple different things. I would probably start with, especially with new people, or maybe you're starting a new business, or you're just starting out in your sales career. And really, for the people that are just starting out, I think one of the worst things I've heard of is, it is what it is. You just have to write, like for insurance, write new business, or maybe you have to sell to anyone that's willing to buy.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who they are. If it's a low hanging piece of fruit, you sell to them, period. Because you just have to do what it takes in the beginning. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen the the results of that are devastating. There's another insurance person that I know that this individual would write anything that would come through the doors. It's more premium. I'm going to make more money. It's going to grow my book. It's going to be great. And then over time, after a few years of that, the most annoying, frustrating, time consuming people are the ones that are taking up all your time. And now you have no time to actually target the people you want to write, the new business that you want to bring in. And so I would highly encourage you, if you're getting into a new industry for sales or you're starting a new business, do not write anyone and everyone. It is extremely important to avoid that because you're just going to be planting weeds in your garden that never ever go away.
Yeah. All business is not good business.
Exactly. And it's so hard when you're starting out because it's just like, I just have to. I got to feed my family. I,
Yeah.
I need this momentum of hitting these sales. And I'm telling you, it is not worth it. Resist that at all costs.
And I will say on top of that, not only do you have ultimately, right, a better book of business, better customers, a more profitable business, but I think it's really powerful from a mindset standpoint that it takes you out of this desperation mindset where
Yeah,
sales then becomes a mutual selection process where you're looking for alignment and fit, which as somebody in sales is very empowering, that you're not at the mercy of
exactly.
whatever comes in the door, that you have agency and you have empowerment and you have the ability to impact what your book of business looks like.
Yeah. The power of no is a great thing.
It is absolutely that until you can say no, you can't really say yes. And that's true from your customer standpoint and from a sales standpoint too.
Yeah, I think the other thing that drives me crazy is when people tell you, or they just assume or think that, people buy from people they like. And
Yeah.
I think that is such a horrible understanding because I was reading a book and just the stats of how many people that get hired in a sales position, their profile is a really likable person that they can get along with anyone and they're really fun to be around. And so yeah, they're going to be great on my sales team. And people don't buy it from people they like. That's such a misunderstanding. I think, Kristen, you may have recommended this book, The Challenger Sales.
Yep.
Yeah, and so that was really beneficial to me because the opposite of that, what you actually want to hire is not just the likable person. What you want is someone who can actually challenge others' thinking. And
Mm-hmm.
if you can do it, obviously in an enjoyable way, and you're not a bully and aggressive about it, but if you can walk in to talk to a business owner or whomever it is you're selling to and challenge their thinking, and it's okay to have a conversation to where it might be a little bit of a debate. And if you
Mm-hmm.
can challenge their thinking, they're going to respect you and trust you so much more than just someone that is enjoyable to be around.
Yep. 100%. And that is just such an important point that people do. Sometimes people buy things from people they like, But when somebody's buying something from you just because they like you, they're not really invested in the solution or what you're selling anyways, which again doesn't make
Exactly.
them a great customer. So you don't want people buying stuff from you as a favor, which is
Yeah.
essentially what happens when you're using the likability as your primary focus. And just like you have to be uncomfortable in doing hard things, it's okay to make your customers uncomfortable sometimes as well,
Yes. Yeah.
because that's what moves them forward and helps them grow and be more successful.
And what's amazing about that is I found like early on in my sales that when I took the approach of being likable, the sales process took so much longer. I mean, I spent so many more hours just going back and forth with them and having additional meetings with them versus when I got more into the challenger mindset to where I basically just cut to the chase and got to the meat of it, let's say. The sales process was shortened probably in half. It was way better.
And I think the funny thing about it is that ultimately people end up liking you more when you take that approach.
Yeah, because you got that trust element that this person knows what the heck they're doing.
Yeah. And the respect of like, okay, they're not going to just be my buddy, but they're going to help me be successful, even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, they're going to be real. Yeah.
Yeah. That authenticity. If you could coach your team right now, I want you to think about the team you have right now. If you could coach your team, and you have an amazing team. So this is a hard question, I think, because they're already very successful. But if there was one thing you could coach them on right now, what would it be?
I would say the biggest thing is mindset. You look at the weather,
Mhm.
the amount of smoke that's in the air. You look at just this year of 2020, there's so many things that are so distracting, that are so emotionally draining with, you know, COVID and just the chaos going on in society. It's so easy to just wait for, oh, I just want to have a good day. I just want the sun to be out. I want to feel good. I don't want all this crap from 2020 happening, and just kind of wait for things to change, and then I'll do better at work. Really, I think mindset is one of the most powerful things. If you can center yourself into what it is that needs to be done, how you're going to feel when you accomplish that at the end of the day, and do that every day,
Yeah.
that it will dramatically change the results of what you're doing and the enjoyment level and all of it. Even, I mean, just a simple example we gave earlier of mindset. When you're feeling those nerves before you're picking up the phone to make a cold call, or you're knocking on a business owner's door, you're feeling that angst, maybe a little bit of anxiety, those butterflies. If you can control your mind and your mindset, you can shift literally how you come across physically, the energy that you have in your voice, the confidence that you have. If you can control your mind, you can do phenomenal things, even when you don't necessarily feel it. And then once you go into that experience that you're fearful of, controlling your mind, the results of it actually changes your mood. It changes everything about you. And so I think mindset is probably the biggest thing that really impacts whether or not someone is successful in the long run. And that's definitely something, I'm looking at over the next year is how can we have those conversations about mindset, not just sales technique?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And I think it's important, A, because it changes the focus and the direction of the team members, which makes them better at their jobs. But beyond that, so much of communication is nonverbal. And
Yes.
so the energy that you're bringing into a sales conversation with your customers is going to influence the direction that that conversation takes. And the way that you go into that, the mindset that you bring into that, your customers are going to feel it.
Yes.
And if you
Yeah.
can't manage your mindset, you can't manage your success.
Yeah. I mean, we've got one person on our team that I don't know how she does it, but she just has this unique ability when she's calling a stranger on the phone I call it basically just giving them a hug through the phone. It's like her arms reach through the phone and gives that person a hug, and she has an amazing connection with complete strangers, and she actually has the highest closing ratio of anyone on her team,
Yeah.
and she just has an amazing ability to do that.
Yeah. And, I think that there is the mindset part of it, but just knowing this person on your team, there's also a genuine care and authenticity that
Yeah.
she genuinely cares about every single person that she talks about, which I think goes back to what you were saying earlier about knowing your why and selling something that you believe in. Because that if you're not doing those
Yes.
things, having that authenticity in those conversations and that care for the customer is going to be harder.
Yeah, you can't fake that stuff. I mean, it's either there or it's not.
Absolutely. 100%. Is there anything else as you kind of think about your sales experience? I know you have a lot of wisdom, but just before we wrap up, when you think about your experience, what you've learned was help other people be successful. Is there any other wisdom that you want to impart?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it wisdom, but either it works or it doesn't. And I think the thing that's, for me is I've developed, and the fun part about life is you always get to grow, you always get to learn more. The thing for me that, if anyone out there wants to continue to keep developing and growing, which I'm assuming anyone listening to your podcast does, to continue to keep being successful in sales, I don't think it's just a simple thing of reading a book or going to a conference or listening to a podcast. I really think that what I've learned in the last few years is to focus on living a very disciplined lifestyle. So it's not just reading books, to enhance your mind, but really I think it's a balanced approach of really your mind and your body and your faith. And so,
Mhm.
like for the mind, I make a concerted effort to befriend people that are way smarter than I am, that
Mhm.
are more successful than I am, and part of that's reading books. You get into people's minds that have done amazing things through books, listening to podcasts. And so, filling your mind with perspectives and understanding that you don't currently have is so important. And I think the thing that really gets overlooked by most people is, I don't know if you want to call it body hacking or what, but I think being very disciplined with your body. Sleep matters.
Yeah.
What you eat matters. Eating to fuel your body versus just for pleasure. Trying to break a sweat once a day, even if it's just for a 30-minute walk in the morning before anyone else is up. Really taking your body seriously and trying to understand how it works. I mean, I remember 3 years ago, I was just struggling with fatigue and I couldn't figure out what it was. I'm a naturally curious person, and so I wanted to figure it out. And I eventually got a blood test done to see what types of food I'm allergic to. And it
Mm.
turns out I was severely allergic to eggs. Didn't know that.
Yeah.
And my blood work told me that. And so when I cut those eggs out of my diet, I actually had something they call it chicken skin. It's like
Okay.
little red dots on the back of your arms and on your back. And when I cut the eggs out, that went away. My energy levels went up significantly. I mean, I used to drink coffee all day long, and I no longer needed to do that because my body was no longer having this allergic reaction to eggs. And so I think really taking your body seriously is going to change how you come across to people, how you feel is translates into those conversations and people can see that. So I think, disciplining your mind, your body, and really just your faith of, centering yourself into something greater than yourself is so important. And like for me, it's spending time meditating and praying. And, I read the Bible because Jesus is one of my greatest heroes.
Yeah.
And so grounding myself into this worldview that's greater than myself is so extremely important, and it keeps me grounded
Yeah.
because over time when you have these different experiences of success, people can become complete douchebags. They really can. And so there's all these things. It's really changed who I am now, is just really living that disciplined lifestyle, because I didn't used to be very disciplined. And now that I've done that, like, I really feel like in the morning I can take on the day and nothing's going to stop me. I mean, I look at even with alcohol. This kind of came to me about a month ago. It's like, okay, with alcohol, do I want to feel good for about 3 hours at night and feel kind of sluggish the next 12 hours the next day? Or do I want to avoid that and go work out in the morning and feel amazing for 12 hours? And yeah, at night, yeah, I'm not having alcohol, but I don't feel quite as chilled out when I'm drinking, at night. So it's like one of those things to where now I don't drink alcohol If it's Sunday night through Thursday night, I do not drink. Actually, this week has been a little bit, I lie, because this week I did drink because I'm annoyed with the smoke and all that. And
Makes it
so,
hard to work out.
yeah, and so, but what's funny is this week I've been sluggish all week, and it's not that I'm not getting my work done. It's more of I have to really work at my work,
Yeah.
whereas when
It's
I'm
less
not drinking midweek,
enjoyable. It takes more
yeah,
energy.
yeah, when I'm not drinking midweek, I don't have to work at working. I just come
Yeah.
here and I work and I love it. Just really understanding your body and how it works, and what are things that you're putting in your body that works really well. Like I drink coffee in the morning. I don't in the afternoon because I know it's going to disrupt my sleep patterns. And so I think when it comes to sales, a lot of people just overlook those things of maybe it's faith, maybe it's body, and maybe even it's your mind. I don't know, but that's for me, I guess. That's what I've learned in the last couple of years is just living a disciplined lifestyle, and life is way more enjoyable.
Yeah. And it's so, well, two things I want to say. One, I love that you said that about the food test because I actually did that this year too. I'm seeing a functional medicine doctor, and it was
Mm.
really interesting because same thing where I'm like, I have been struggling with fatigue. Like, I just don't know what to do. Part of it was sleep debt because I had an old dog that was high maintenance and not letting me sleep. And
That's
just, I was
brutal.
very
It's like
surprised.
having a
Like,
newborn.
it was. But I was allergic to apples,
Mm.
cranberries, potatoes, and dairy. And so taking those things out of my diet has made a huge difference. And I think taking the time to recognize that when you are in sales, you are your biggest sales tool.
100%.
And so
I
what do
use
you
that thing
need
100% a lot.
to, me too, but what do you need to do to take care of you, right? You and your being and your mindset and your mental state and your physical state is more of an asset than any advertisement you could do, any piece of collateral you could have, any
Yep,
tchotchke you could give out. So take care of it.
exactly.
Yeah, that is great, great advice. John, thank you so much for sharing your insights with me and with the listeners here. You are just an amazing professional. You have done so much for your team, and I have the highest amount of respect for you. So thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Christy.
Thank you, John, for that amazing interview. He shared so much wisdom from how to really service and help your customers to how to take care of yourself so that you have the mindset and the motivation to continually succeed. Next week, I want to dive more into this topic about how you can prime yourself for success. And I'm going to be sharing the top 3 habits that you need to cultivate personally in order to succeed in sales. In the meantime, if you liked this episode, make sure to give it a 5-star review and subscribe to Sales Fiction so you get fresh episodes downloaded as soon as they are available.